Okay, wonderful. Hopefully everyone can see my screen. So let's get started. Ion nutrition going beyond carrots. So the time that we spend together here today, I hope will be the most important hour or 2 hours that you spend when it comes to taking care of your eyes, not just for the moment, but really for the future, for the years and decades to come, because so much of ocular health really rests upon our nutrition. And I hope that what I will share with you today will change the way that you make dietary choices to specifically support your eye health and prevent conditions that may lead to vision impairment or even blindness. So again, food is so important to provide our eyes with the foundational nutrients they need to stay healthy. And I'm really a huge advocate of this quote, food is medicine. Let food be thy medicine and let medicine be thy food. I'm sure many people have probably heard this before, but when it comes to vision health, when it comes to the prevention of conditions like macular degeneration, diabetic retinopathy, dry eye, cataracts, glaucoma, and many more, I really have seen the power of food in terms of including that in the management of my patients and how diet nutrition has really changed the trajectory of a lot of people's ocular disease, and in some cases, even reversed their disease, even brought back their vision, and also prevented future vision loss. So when it comes to food, I oftentimes ask my patients this question just for fun. I ask them, what food do you think is most important for your eye health? And the vast majority of people will respond with this. Well, carrots, isn't it true if I just eat carrots, that will keep my eyes healthy? But what I'll tell you is that when it comes to eye health and nutrition, carrots are really the tip of the iceberg when it comes to ocular nutrition. And there are many nutrients, many foods that can provide those nutrients, and that's really what I'll be sharing with you today. But before we get to that, I thought I would also share with you this historical tidbit about this urban myth. How did carrots get associated with eye disease? Well, this goes back to World War II and what was happening in Europe during World War II. And basically, the Germans were flying in and dropping bombs over Great Britain. And they were doing this mainly at nighttime. So they were doing these nighttime air bomb raids. And what the British did was actually they were able to spot those German planes in the sky and shoot them down. And so then the Germans were wondering, how is it that the British can detect our planes even in the dead, the blackness of night, and still be able to detect our planes and shoot them down? So the British started spreading this rumor that their pilots were all eating lots of carrots. And carrots were providing beta carotene that helped with their night vision. And that's how the British were able to shoot down the planes. Now, that's really a partial myth because, yes, carrots are important. Yes, beta carotene is important to optimize night vision. But the truth is that the British had developed a new technology that allowed them to detect the planes in the sky and shoot them down. And that technology was actually radar. And back then, in the late 1940s, radar was brand new, and that's really how the British were able to do this feat of excellent night vision. Now, what happened after that time was that because this myth was being propagated, many people started to eat carrots. So basically, the German pilots all began eating carrots. Other people in the military started eating carrots, and the entire world started eating carrots, thinking that that's what would allow them to have perfect, excellent 20/20 vision. Now, at that time, actually, there was a huge surplus of carrots because of this myth being propagated, and people were eating carrot stews, carrot cake, carrots and salads, and etc. So that's how it got propagated, and it's still through the generations. It's still carried through today. But the truth is, as I mentioned earlier, it's not just one nutrient, one food that will support our eyes. It really is a diversity of nutrients and a diversity of foods that will help to support eye health. And when you think about the eye, many people actually don't really think about the eye very much. They take for granted that they will have excellent vision. However, we should think about our vision. We should be proactive about it rather than taking it for granted. But when you think about the eye as an organ is actually quite small. It's about the size of a golf ball, but it has many important structures inside. And this diagram here on the left shows you a few of the over 40 different structures that comprise the eyeball. So there's in the front of the eye, there's the cornea. By the way, this is a cross section through the eye. So normally when we look at the eye, we look at the eye from the front of the eye. So we see the white part, we see the colored part, which is the iris, we see the pupil, which is the dark circle in the middle. But if you were to take this eyeball, cut it in half, you would see this cross section. And I'll just orient you to a few structures of the eye. The front part, again, is the cornea. It's a transparent dome that allows light rays to come in. And then behind that, we have the iris, which is the colored part of the eye. Now, different people have different colored eyes, and this is the iris that gives people that color, whether it's blue or green or brown or hazel. That color comes from the iris. In the center of the iris, I mentioned again that circle in the middle of the eye is the pupil, and this is dynamic. It can change size. It can allow light rays to enter even in dark conditions by getting really big. In bright sunlight, it will most likely shrink down to a very, very small size. Again, the pupil is constantly changing, but it is a part of the eye, a structure of the eye. Behind the pupil sits the lens, and that's what's represented here by this disc-like white structure is the lens. Now, the lens is also dynamic. It can change shape, it can change size, and it allows us to focus at different distances, whether we're looking at far away, basically infinity in the distance, whether we're looking at something at intermediate distance. For example, if you're looking at your computer screen, that's intermediate distance, maybe two or 3 feet away, or a monitor, for example, slightly further. If you're looking at something up close, that's usually about 12 to 14 inches from one's face. So the lens is able to change its shape to focus at distance, intermediate distances, and up close. Next, we have behind that, we have a jelly in the back of the eye. This is called the vitreous body that helps to keep the shape of the eye. It's mainly made out of water and collagen and other proteins as well. And in the back of the eye, if I open up this model eyeball here and take out this plastic structure, which represents the vitreous, behind that is the orange structure you see here with these red and blue blood vessels. This orange structure represents the retina. And the retina is the tissue in the back of the eye that captures light rays, processes those light rays into impulses that get sent through the optic nerve, which is this yellow structure right here. This connects up with the brain behind the eyes. So again, there's a whole system that makes up the eyeball. Again, many, many complex structures and over 200 different cell types within the eye. So the reason I go through all of that with you is because I want you to understand that the eyeball is complex. Therefore, the nutrition that can best support the eyeball is also complex. And what I've done is I had done a lot of research in preparation for my book, Beyond Carrots, Best Foods for Eye Health A to Z. And as I was researching for that book about ocular nutrition, I realized that we actually need not just beta carotene to support our eyes, we actually need over 30 different nutrients to fully support our eye health. And the good news is, yes, it may seem like a lot, 30 nutrients. Oh my goodness, how am I going to get in 30 nutrients from my eye health? The good news is most of those nutrients are relatively available through foods. Some of those nutrients our bodies can make, but many of them our bodies cannot make. So we need to get them externally, mainly through food, ideally through food, but also maybe food plus supplementation. So 30 nutrients, many, many foods. And in my book, in chapter 2 of my book, called The Therapeutic Foods for Eye Health, I go through 40 of the foods that are richest in the eye health nutrients. Again, so 30 nutrients, 40 foods. And luckily, these foods, they provide not just one nutrient. The reason I call them therapeutic foods is they provide multiple nutrients to support eye health. So they're very, very powerful and very nutrient dense. Now, I mentioned this just earlier. In terms of these 30 plus nutrients needed for optimal eye health, many of them are essential, meaning that our bodies cannot produce them on our own. Some of them are endogenously produced. For example, vitamin D. Our body can make vitamin D when exposed to sunlight, and also antioxidants such as glutathione can be produced by the body, and even glutathione's production can be upregulated by the body. So there are ways to upregulate your glutathione production. Now, the other thing I want to point out before we get into some of these nutrients, these specific nutrients, is that fortunately, there is much duplication in the nutritional needs of the different parts of the eye. So it's not that, okay, you just need these nutrients for your cornea, and you just need these nutrients for your lens, and these for your retina, and these for your optic nerve. There is much duplication here in terms of the nutrients that will support also your corneal health, your lens health, your optic nerve health, your retinal health. So that's a good thing. The other really good thing is that many of these nutrients that I'm going to be sharing with you today not only support your vision health, but they have also been shown to be beneficial for brain health. And also, here's another fun fact. The eye is actually a direct extension of the brain, and it's part of your central nervous system. So the eye is a part of the brain. So when you promote your eye health, you're also promoting your brain health. And not only that, many of the nutrients I'll be sharing with you today promote other organ systems within your body as well. So also, some of these nutrients will support your cardiometabolic health. They will support your skin health. They will support your gut health. They will also support your immune system and your immune health. So multiple benefits. When you're thinking about nutrition for the eyes, don't just thinking about eating right for your sight, really think about eating right for your entire body. That's really the way you should be thinking about it. So I just wanted to share with you the complexity of the eye and some of the nutrients. And then I'm going to just choose a few of these 30 or so nutrients to go into more depth on. So when we think about the surface of the eye, the very outermost part of the eye, it's not just one part. It's actually made up of the cornea, the conjunctiva, which is the covering of the eye, or like the skin of the eye, the sclera, which is the white part, the eyelids, the eyelashes, the glands in the eyelids, and the lacrimal gland, which sits up here behind your eyelid, your upper eyelid, that produces a lot of the tears that coat the surface of your eye. So what are the nutrients to support just the surface of the eye? Well, take a look here. We need antioxidants, such as vitamins A, C, and E. We need fatty acids, primarily the omega-3 fatty acids, including DHA, EPA, and ALA. We need a variety of minerals such as sodium, potassium, calcium, magnesium, zinc, copper, and manganese. We also need collagen because much of the eye is made out of collagen. And the building blocks of collagen are amino acids. So we need various proteins, and specific proteins that help make up some of the collagens found in the eye include proline, glycine, and hydroxyproline. We also need hydration for our tears to help coat and lubricate the surface of the eye. So this is just for one section of the eye. You need all of these nutrients. Now, let's move on. Think about the nutrients that can support your lens. Again, the lens is the structure that helps you to focus. It's inside the eye. And when the lens gets older, when it starts to oxidize, it becomes, instead of being transparent, it can become opaque, which leads to a cataract. So a cataract is really when the lens in the natural eye, instead of being transparent, becomes cloudy. Think of it like a dirty window. Initially you have a nice clean window, but when it's exposed to the elements over time, weather and dust and storms, etc., it starts to get cloudy and dirty, and it's very hard to see through that window. That's exactly what happens with the lens as we all get older. So what are the nutrients that can support your lens? Well, the antioxidants, again, similar to the surface of the eye, we have vitamins A, C, and E. Also glutathione, which is the body's master antioxidant. Also the macular carotenoids, lutein, and zeaxanthin. And don't worry if you don't yet know what these are, because I'm going to be going into a lot more depth on these two nutrients in just a few minutes. Now, moving on to the back part of the eye, the retina and the choroid, which is the vascular layer underneath the retina that supports the retina. The retina actually has many different types of cells. Here, I'm showing you just a couple of the types of cells, but and there are 9 layers to the retina. So again, it's really complex. You don't need to understand all the complexity in detail, but just know that it's very metabolically active. So your retina is highly metabolically active. It's constantly needing energy in the form of ATP. The retina is also, because that's what the retina captures light rays, it's also very susceptible to oxidative stress and free radical damage. So that's why when it comes to the nutrients that support the retina, we need the antioxidants. So we need the macular carotenoids in particular. And again, in just a few moments, I'm going to go into what the macular carotenoids are. But we need lutein, zeaxanthin, mesozeaxanthin. We also need, in terms of antioxidants, we see glutathione here again. We see again vitamin C and E. I should also include vitamin A in there. It is important as well. We also need alpha lipoic acid and N-acetylcysteine. And these are some endogenous antioxidants. Yes, some of them we can get from foods as well, but mainly they're endogenous. We also, for retinal health, we also need the omega-3s, in particular DHA, EPA, and ALA. We need certain minerals, iron, selenium, copper, and zinc. We need a range of the B vitamins because again, the retina is very metabolically active. It's constantly producing ATPs. And in order to produce that much energy, we need lots of B vitamins to support the energy cycle, the Krebs cycle, basically. And we also need hydration to support the retina to make sure that enough blood flow is getting to the retina, and nutrients carried by blood and oxygen carried by blood as well. So now let's talk about, this is the last part of the eye I'll share with you, and the nutritional needs of the eye. So the back of the eye, the optic nerve, remember I said this is what connects the eyeball to the brain. And this is also very metabolically active. So again, the B vitamins come up here as well. Specifically, we need vitamin B12, which is cobalamin. We need folate, which is vitamin B9. We need B1, B2, B3, B6. We also need, again, antioxidants, glutathione, vitamin C and E. We need certain minerals. We need the omegas. In addition, vitamin D is also important for optic nerve health, coenzyme Q10 for ATP production by mitochondria, and citicoline, which is a natural compound that is a precursor to phosphatidylcholine. And phosphatidylcholine is important for structural stability of cell membranes in the eye, in the various different cells of the eye. So all in all, this is a very busy slide. I know it's kind of overwhelming when you think about it, but here I'm sharing with you the 30 plus nutrients you need to support the various different parts of your eye. Now, again, no need to memorize anything like this, but just know it's very complex because of the diversity that's represented here, but also because of the different nutritional needs of various eye structures. Now, in the next part of my talk, I'm going to be sharing with you, I don't have time to go through all 30 nutrients. That would take probably a whole weekend symposium of me talking to go through all 30 nutrients, but I'm going to touch upon 3 of the most important classes of nutrients for eye health. And what these are number 1, the macular carotenoids, number 2, omega fatty acids, and number 3, bioflavonoids. So let's dive a little bit deeper into each of these 3 classes of nutrients and why they're so important for eye health, but also where can we get them from? So the macular carotenoids, as I mentioned earlier, there are 3 of them: lutein, zeaxanthin, and mesozeaxanthin. Now, maybe you've never heard of them, or maybe you have, but it's kind of hard to remember the names. They're kind of long, they're complex, but these are what I like to consider eye vitamins. These are the vitamins that are very specific for the eye. Now, officially, they're not vitamins. They're actually called bioactive compounds, but they do fall into the carotenoid class. And because of that, they are cousins to other carotenoids. For example, beta carotene, lycopene. These are just some of the other carotenoids that are cousins, vitamin A as well, cousins to the macular carotenoids. Now, another scientific name for the macular carotenoids is xanthophyll carotenoids. Now, xanthophyll, the root of the word, means yellow. And that's because these carotenoids tend to be yellowish or yellow-orange in color. So they're pigmented compounds, pigmented nutrients. And the reason why these are so important is because our bodies cannot make these nutrients, but our bodies can absorb these nutrients from the bloodstream, from our diet, that travel from our diet, absorb them, and these pigments get deposited inside the eye into the macula. Now, I was showing you earlier my eye model, and let me just open it up here again. So the back of the eye here is the retina, and this yellow spot is representing the macula or the center of the macula, the fovea. And this is where these three pigments get deposited. And why do they get deposited there? Well, it's because these pigments, these eye nutrients, are very potent antioxidants. So imagine there's a lot of toxicity that gets into the eye from light, whether it's UV, UVA, UVB light, or even blue light that may be coming from our screens, coming from the lights in our households. These different wavelengths of light come into the eye. They can potentially do damage to the retina, but these pigments are there to neutralize those wavelengths of light. So you can almost think about these pigments like your internal shields against light toxicity, against phototoxicity. You can even think of them as your eye's natural sunglasses and your eye's natural blue blockers. So no need to get blue blocking glasses, but rather make sure you're getting enough of these macular carotenoids in your diet to naturally protect against blue light and UV light. Now, what's the distribution of these three carotenoids? Well, they get distributed almost like a bullseye. So the outermost circle, which is represented here by the bright yellow, this outermost circle is lutein. So lutein is out on the outside. Remember, it's still inside the eye, but on the outer ring is lutein. Inside that is zeaxanthin, and inside that is mesozeaxanthin. That's represented by the darkest orange. So zeaxanthin is the lighter orange color you see here, this thinner ring, and the bright orange in the middle is due to mesozeaxanthin. Now these are the chemical structures of these three antioxidants. As you can see, they're very long molecules. If you think back to your chemistry class, maybe in high school or college, you can see that these long molecules, they have a lot of atoms, but they also have a lot of electrons. And the reason why these are very effective as antioxidants is because these long molecules can contribute their electrons to neutralize free radicals and oxidative damage. So that's why they're very long. They're kind of built to give up an electron when it's necessary to prevent ocular damage. And so now, I just wanted to share with you some of the important studies using these dietary macular carotenoids or one particular eye condition, which is relatively common in older individuals, which is age-related macular degeneration, or ARMD. So this was probably the first landmark study published in 1994 by Joanna Seddon and her colleagues. And this study looked at individuals and looked at their dietary intakes of certain nutrients and what their risk was for vision loss from advanced stages of macular degeneration. So not the earlier stages, but really the advanced stages. And so what the study found was that people who had the highest quintile intake of carotenoids had a 43% lower risk for macular degeneration compared with the people who had minimal to no carotenoids in their diet, the lowest quintile. So highest quintile did the best with a 43% risk reduction. And of all the carotenoids, lutein and zeaxanthin were the highest in terms of their beneficial value in terms of protecting against age-related macular degeneration. So again, 1994, so now that's about 30 years ago or so, that was the first study to really show the impact that diet can have on reducing the risk of vision loss. Now, since then, there have been many, many, many other studies looking at diet and carotenoids and macular degeneration, but many of the studies look at dietary intakes, or they actually measure serum carotenoid levels or skin carotenoid levels. But really the best way to know if you're getting enough macular carotenoids is a test that's done by an eye doctor. Now, not all eye doctors do this, however, but certain research facilities have this test available. It's called macular pigment optical density, which is MPOD. And it can actually measure non-invasively, measure the amount of carotenoids in the center of the retina that get deposited. And so there was one study here that was published in 2005 that showed that people who had higher intakes and serum carotenoid concentrations actually had higher MPOD levels. So there was a direct relationship. The more your intake, the higher the MPOD level tended to be. So again, it's MPOD that really is the marker, the biomarker for carotenoid intake. Now, unfortunately, most ophthalmologists, most optometrists don't do this test on a regular basis. It does require specific instrumentation to perform, but it can be done, again, mainly in research settings, especially when studies are being done. MPOD is measured in patients. Now, this was perhaps the largest study looking at macular carotenoids and macular degeneration. This was published in 2015, and it had over 100,000 participants. And these individuals were followed for over 26 years. So it was a long-term study. And in this study, they predicted the plasma carotenoid score. So they didn't actually measure in the blood or in the skin what was the carotenoid concentration. What they did was they did food frequency questionnaires in these 100,000 people, and they estimated what their plasma carotenoid levels would be. And in all of the 100,000 people, they found that out of those 100,000, about 1,300 had intermediate macular degeneration, 1,100 had advanced macular degeneration. But the key point is this. Again, a higher carotenoid intake was associated with an inverse risk of advanced macular degeneration with a relative risk of 40%, relative risk of 0.59, which equates to about 40% reduction in risk. So this was very, very significant. If you eat the right way, if you include these macular carotenoids, you can reduce your risk of advanced macular degeneration and vision loss by anywhere from 40 to 43%. And so, sorry, I went the wrong way on the slide, but we'll go this way here. And then finally, this is the last study I'm going to share with you about the macular carotenoids. There was a recent meta-analysis published last year in 2023 by a group of individuals, including one of my colleagues at New York Eye and Ear Infirmary, which is where I'm an associate professor, Dr. Richard Rosen, who's a leading researcher in retina. And he and his colleagues looked at all of the studies that had been published on carotenoids and macular degeneration. And so it wasn't 100% of the studies that showed the benefit, but 11 out of 20 studies showed that a higher intake of dietary carotenoids, specifically the macular carotenoids, lowered the risk of macular degeneration. And again, the highest quintile of serum lutein zeaxanthin or intake of lutein zeaxanthin was associated with the lowest risk of advanced macular degeneration. So the take-home point here is that have lots of lutein and zeaxanthin in your diet. That's the bottom line if you want to prevent macular degeneration naturally. Now, what is the recommended intake of these carotenoids? Well, there is no US RDA, which means US recommended daily allowance. We don't yet have that guidance, but based off of carotenoid researchers, these are the numbers they put out. So the recommended daily intake, or the RDI, of these macular carotenoids for lutein is anywhere from 6.5 to 20 milligrams a day. For zeaxanthin, it's about 1 to 2 milligrams a day. And for mesozeaxanthin, unfortunately, there is no value that's recommended because mesozeaxanthin is not readily found in foods. It is found in the skin of certain fish. For example, mackerel and trout, it can be found in small amounts in the skin of those types of fish. But in general, it's very hard to get mesozeaxanthin from diet alone. What we think happens is that much of the lutein that's gotten from externally, again, from diet or from supplements, gets converted into mesozeaxanthin and then deposited right at the very, very center of the retina. So we think the body is converting lutein into mesozeaxanthin. So again, this is why having enough lutein is so important in one's diet. Now, compared with what the recommended daily intake is, what do most people, especially people on a Western diet, get in their daily, their daily intake? So lutein, instead of getting 6.5 to 20 milligrams a day, most people are getting only about 1 or 2 milligrams a day. So a huge discrepancy between what we need and what we're getting. In terms of zeaxanthin, most people need about 1 to 2 milligrams a day. Unfortunately, most of us, especially if we're on a Western style diet, have less than 1 milligram a day. So again, huge gap between what we need and what we're getting, which stresses the importance of making an effort to really increase your dietary intake of carotenoids. But also, if you feel that the gap is too hard to close, to take a supplement. And we'll talk about supplements towards the end of the talk as well, because I do get a lot of questions about eye supplements. Now, how can you get lutein and zeaxanthin through foods? The most highly concentrated foods that, or the foods that have the highest concentration of lutein and zeaxanthin include the leafy greens. So for example, kale is probably the #1 food that provides a very high concentration of lutein and zeaxanthin, but also arugula, spinach, broccoli, Swiss chard, collard greens, romaine lettuce, mustard greens, dandelion greens, and bok choy. And this is not a complete list. There are other foods as well, but this is just kind of a starter list to learn about the leafy greens that are highest in these macular carotenoids. And if you think about the concentration of these nutrients, and you also think about the way the food is prepared, if you cook these leafy greens, the concentration actually gets more concentrated, or it's more dense. So 1 cup of cooked kale will provide you with 23.7 milligrams of lutein and zeaxanthin. So well over that 20 milligram target range that we should be getting. Now, you can see spinach comes in a close second at 20.4, followed by Swiss chard, mustard greens, and so on. Now, if you're having any of these leafy greens, instead of cooking them, let's say you're having them raw, then I usually suggest anywhere from, if you're just putting the leafy greens in loosely, excuse me, I recommend about 5 cups. If you're packing it in, I would recommend about 3 cups. So excuse me, I'm just going to grab a drink of water. My throat is quite dry because I'm getting over a sore throat. So please forgive me for that. Now, let's say you're not a big fan of leafy greens. Let's say you don't like the taste. It's a little bit too bitter for your taste buds. Or let's say you have a sensitivity to oxalates. Many people may have a sensitivity to oxalates and they really cannot consume leafy greens. So what else can you do to get your dietary intake of lutein and zeaxanthin? Well, another wonderful source are bell peppers. In particular, the orange and the yellow varieties are very, very high in lutein and zeaxanthin. Think of orange and yellow foods, because if foods are orange and yellow, they're likely high in the carotenoids. And again, certain of those orange and yellow foods will also be high, specifically, not just in all carotenoids, but specifically in lutein and zeaxanthin. So bell peppers are a wonderful source. So if you're ever offered bell peppers, instead of getting the green ones, which I think are most readily available and perhaps a little bit cheaper, really strive for the really multicolored ones, particularly the orange and the yellow ones. Also, if you do eat animal products, then the egg yolk is a wonderful source of lutein and zeaxanthin. That orange-yellow color of the egg yolk is because of very high concentrations of these yellow pigmented carotenoids. Additionally, corn that's yellow is also a rich source of zeaxanthin as well as lutein. And by the way, the scientific name for corn is zea mays, Zeamays, and that's actually where zeaxanthin got its name from, the scientific name of corn. So again, think of corn, it's yellow because it has high levels of zeaxanthin and lutein. And finally, I'll share with you, there are other foods as well, but this is what I'll share with you because I want to move on to the next topic. But certain spices can also be rich in lutein and zeaxanthin, particularly paprika, as well as cayenne pepper. And if you think about where these spices come from, these spices actually come from peppers that are typically red or orange or yellow. So think of spices as well when you're thinking about your dietary intake of these nutrients. Again, there are many other foods that provide lutein and zeaxanthin. And in my book, Beyond Carrots, Best Foods for Eye Health A to Z, in part 2 of my book, which is where I go through the 40 foods, you'll see that there are a wide variety of foods that can provide these nutrients. Now, aside from eye health, there are also other pretty significant health benefits of these macular carotenoids. For example, these macular carotenoids have been shown to really boost cognitive health and reduce cognitive decline. So they're wonderful for brain health. And we're also just learning from studies on children, particularly infants, that their brains also benefit from lutein and zeaxanthin during development. So it's not just, we typically think of infant brain health with DHA, the omega-3 fatty acid that's important for brain structure in childhood development, but also we're learning now that lutein and zeaxanthin may be just as important for developing brains. Also, there are many proven benefits of these macular carotenoids for skin health. Just as they protect the eye, they can also protect the skin against oxidative stress and oxidative damage. And then finally, there is some emerging research looking at prostate cancer and breast cancer and the benefits of the macular carotenoids for both of these types of cancers. Now, again, this research is relatively early, but in terms of cognitive health, skin health, the research is very vast, and it's very, very convincing in terms of the benefits for non-eye organs. Now, let's move on to the omega fatty acids as the second category of nutrients that are important for eye health. Now, when we think about omegas, most people probably think immediately of the threes because the omega-3s most often get the press. They get the most attention. However, there are other types of omegas as well. There are omega-5s, there are omega-6s, 7s, and 9s. And these are long-chain fatty acids, meaning they have multiple carbons. They're very, very long-chain fatty acid. And they're important for us because they help to ensure stability of our cell membranes. A lot of our cell membranes are made up of these fatty acids, but also they have, depending on which fatty acid it is, they have certain anti-inflammatory benefits in addition to being antioxidants. So let's talk now about the threes and the sixes. So omega-3s, now this is a very simplified diagram. Omega-3s, the precursor is alpha linolenic acid, or ALA, that gets converted by the body by desaturases into eicosapentaenoic acid, which is EPA, which then gets converted into docosahexaenoic acid, which is DHA. So there is a chain of events whereby the precursor ALA can get converted into EPA and DHA. And there are intermediate areas along the way as well. There's another one called SDA, which is stearidonic acid, which we're learning is also very, very important as an omega-3, very, very potent as an antioxidant and anti-inflammatory nutrient. But we'll leave that for another time. But in general, the omega-3s tend to be, their byproducts tend to be molecules that help to resolve inflammation, including resolvins and protectants. So omega-3s we typically think of as the quote-unquote good long-chain fatty acids. Omega-6s, on the other hand, the precursor is linoleic acid, or LA. Again, not to be confused with alpha-linolenic acid, but LA versus ALA. And linolenic acid typically gets converted by certain enzymes into arachidonic acid. If there's too much linoleic acid, it will get converted into arachidonic acid. And unfortunately, arachidonic acid leads us down a pro-inflammatory pathway. And its byproducts tend to be very, very pro-inflammatory. For example, eicosanoids, prostaglandins, leukotrienes, and thromboxanes. These are various small compounds in our blood that can help to promote inflammation and promote clotting even. So the goal here is to make sure, now we need both. We need both omega-3s and we need omega-6s because our bodies cannot make either of these long-chain fatty acids. However, what's important here is the balance between the two. Excuse me just one moment. So you may have heard of this before, the ratio of omega-6s to omega-3s. And we want to have a good ratio, meaning a ratio in which the diet is relatively high in omega-6 and low in relatively high in omega-3 and low in omega-6, because that will help to keep the body's balance towards an anti-inflammatory path. Versus if we have a diet that's high in omega-6 and low in omega-3, that will increase our risk of inflammation and chronic disease. And this has been well studied, well documented. So the ratio is what's important. It's not that we should be eliminating all omega-6s. Absolutely not, because they are essential for the body, for our structural cell membrane integrity. But we need to think about the ratio. By the way, just another fun fact here. In terms of DHA, which is docosahexaenoic acid, this long-chain fatty acid, which is an omega-3, happens to be, in terms of its concentration, very concentrated in the retina. So the retinal photoreceptors actually have the highest concentration of DHA in the entire body, even higher than what's found in the brain. So we absolutely need DHA for structural health in the retina, in our photoreceptor cells. The photoreceptors are the cells that capture light energy and then send that electrical signal through the optic nerve to the brain. So again, very, very important. And also beyond that, we know that this particular omega-3 has many other health benefits: cardiometabolic health benefits, neurologic benefits, mental health benefits, and even migraine benefits. So it's a really, really important nutrient to have in one's diet. Now, what does the research show when it comes to omegas and eye health? Well, this is the first study, or first major study, that really looked at the benefit or potential benefit of omega-3s for a particular condition, an eye condition known as dry eye, in which the surface of the eye, the tears evaporate, and then the surface dries out. So this study it came from the Women's Health Initiative, which was done in the 1980s to 1990s. And this study included over 32,000 women, many of whom happened to be in the healthcare field, many of whom were nurses, between the ages of 45 to 84. And in this study, these individuals were followed out over time. And of those 32,000 or so, about 1,500 had dry eye. And so the investigators looked at what did their dietary intake of omegas look like. And what was found is that the women in the study who had a high omega-3 intake had a 17% lower risk for dry eye, with an odds ratio of 0.83. And basically, these people who had the lowest risk for dry eye were having fish intake about 3 times per week, primarily tuna. Tuna was conferring the highest benefit or protection against dry eye in this particular study. Now, interestingly, the study found that the higher the ratio of omega-6 to 3, meaning too many sixes, too few threes, these individuals had the highest risk of dry eye, with an odds ratio of 2.51. Now, aside from dry eye, omegas have also been shown to help other eye conditions, for example, macular degeneration. And so this study was published in 2008, looking at dietary omega-3 intake and fish intake in the primary prevention of macular degeneration. And so this study was a meta-analysis. It took 9 other studies that had been previously published, kind of pulled together all that data, and then found some conclusions. And what they found was that over about almost 89,000 people studied in these 9 studies, the people who had a higher dietary intake of omega-3 had a 38% reduction in their risk for late dry macular degeneration. And in this study, they found that people who had fish intake about at least twice a week had a reduced risk of macular degeneration as well, specifically late macular degeneration. So in summary, when we're talking about the omegas and eye health, again, it's really important to have a good ratio of 6 to 3. Most researchers believe that the ratio should be about 4 to 1. So for every 4 omega-6 intake, you want to have 1 of 3 4 to 1 ratio of 6 to 3. And unfortunately, most people who are on a Western diet have a much higher ratio. And the ratios have been anywhere from 12 to 1 to 30 to 1, or even 50 to 1. And if you're health conscious, you probably have already heard these numbers before from previous speakers or from your own, potentially your own research. But the lower the ratio, the better. And in my office, I actually measure what the ratio is. I do a test called the Omega Quant test, which measures not just omega-3 and omega-6 concentrations, percentages, but also measures the ratio between 6 to 3. And in my practice, I found that on average, most people have about a 20-to-1 ratio in my practice. And my goal is to try to get their omega 6 to 3 ratio lower through dietary interventions and perhaps through supplementation as well. Now, the last class of nutrients I'll talk about today, out of all those 30, is bioflavonoids. Now, bioflavonoids are compounds that come from plants. They are natural compounds made by plants that help to protect the organism, to help to protect the plant against oxidative damage, free radical damage, and also infection and inflammation. And these bioflavonoids, by the way, there were at least 4,000 bioflavonoids thus identified in nature. There are probably many, many more, but at least 4,000. And most of these compounds tend to have a particular color to them. So many of them are pigmented. And this is just an example showing you the wide range of bioflavonoids that are found in nature. As you can see, many of them do come from plants. Vegetables, fruits, nuts, and seeds are primary sources of the bioflavonoids. Now, why are they important for eye health? Well, as I have said all throughout the talk, the eye is a very delicate, vulnerable organ. It's very vulnerable to oxidative damage, particularly light damage, but also it's vulnerable to other types of stress, including inflammation. And so there are certain bioflavonoids that have been studied for eye health and their potential protective benefits. And if anyone is interested in really doing a deep dive into this topic, I would recommend that you read this article, published in 2010 in the Journal of Pharmacy and Pharmacology. And this was a great review summary article that looked at the main bioflavonoids that have been researched for eye health. And this is just a short list of the ones that have been researched. They include anthocyanins or anthocyanidins, as they're also called, quercetin, curcumin, EGCG, which is the active ingredient in green tea, also known as epigallocatechin 3 gallate. That's a mouthful to pronounce. So we typically call it EGCG. Also apigenin and hesperidin. By the way, hesperidin tends to be found, it's a bioflavonoid that tends to be found in citrus fruits. So in the interest of time, I don't have the time to go through each of these bioflavonoids and share with you all the research behind them. But a lot of the research is in my book, Beyond Carrots. But I'll talk to you mainly about two of them, the anthocyanins and quercetin. So why have anthocyanins been shown to be so helpful for vision health? Well, anthocyanins have been shown to help with rhodopsin regeneration in the photoreceptors in the eye. Now, you may not have heard of rhodopsin before, but it is found in rods, which are important for our night vision. You've heard of maybe rods and cones in the retina. So rhodopsin is the molecule that's important for rod regeneration. And so anthocyanins have been shown to help with that. Also, anthocyanins have been shown to help with release of endothelin-1 in ciliary muscle. Ciliary muscle is the muscle that controls the shape of the lens. Remember, I was talking earlier about how the lens is dynamic. It's constantly changing its focus. So anthocyanins can help with that. Also, anthocyanins release nitric oxide, which helps to relax smooth muscle in blood vessels. And so because of that, because of all of these reasons, anthocyanins may have benefits for eye issues such as eye strain. The medical term for eye strain is asthenopia. Also for axial myopia, in which the eye lengthens and causes nearsightedness, primarily during childhood or young adult years. The eye can really lengthen, and anthocyanins may play a role in reducing that lengthening and helping to reduce the progression of myopia, which is, by the way, an epidemic around the world. And also, anthocyanins have shown to be promising for glaucoma in terms of protecting the optic nerve and also perhaps lowering eye pressure. Now, the only caveat with anthocyanins is that when studied in animal models, unfortunately, when given orally, the bioavailability wasn't great for these anthocyanins. And when studied in animal models, for example, when the anthocyanins were given either intravenously via IV or intraperitoneally, meaning into the abdominal cavity, injected into the abdominal cavity, the bioavailability was much higher. So despite that, we still have a lot to learn about anthocyanins and their benefits and what's the best route of administration, whether it's better to take it orally. In humans, we don't yet know in humans, if there's a differential here between oral administration versus IV versus into the abdominal cavity. But I do hope that hopefully in the next 5 to 10 years, we'll have a lot more data, which will guide us in terms of its bioavailability. There is one particular compound or anthocyanin compound that I did want to share with you all today, because this is really, I think it's undervalued in the eye care community. Most eye doctors that I talk to, my colleagues in ophthalmology and optometry, have never even heard of this before. But I do think it's important to spread the word, especially when it comes to natural ways to support your eye health, especially if you're at risk for glaucoma or if you've been told you have glaucoma. And this particular anthocyanin is called mirtogenol. And what it is, it's actually a combination of two things. It's a combination of pine bark extract, French maritime pine bark extract, and a bilberry extract, both plant-based compounds. And so there was one study looking at the benefits of mirtogenol on eye pressure in 32 people who had ocular hypertension, which is basically high eye pressure, which is a marker for glaucoma. So in these 38 people, 20 of them were treated with mirtogenol orally as a supplement, and 10 were given placebo. And what the researchers found was that the people who received the mirtogenol had a 3-point decrease in their eye pressure and also improved ocular blood flow on Doppler studies. So basically, not only did their eye pressure go down, which is about the same amount of decrease we see in a lot of glaucoma medications on the market, or even glaucoma surgeries. The typical target with a surgery or medication can be about 3 points or so. And so this particular natural compound did reach that same therapeutic benefit of a 3-point reduction in eye pressure. So again, this is something that unfortunately has not gotten much attention in the eye care world, but really I think more people need to understand this, and perhaps more eye doctors should be encouraging their patients to take this as a supplement to help lower their eye pressure. Now, I do talk to my glaucoma patients about this, and I do encourage them to consider doing this in conjunction with what they're already doing. So it's not a replacement by any means, but let's say they're already on an eye drop and they're having trouble getting their eye pressure lower, then I would recommend maybe taking mirtogenol in addition as a complementary intervention to manage their eye pressure and glaucoma. Now, how can you get some of these anthocyanidins naturally that can help support your eye health? Well, basically, berries are a rich source of these anthocyanins. And the berries that are highest in these natural compounds include blackberries, blueberries, bilberries, raspberries, strawberries, and goji berries. In general, though, the darker the berry, the more concentrated the anthocyanins are. Though red berries, even though they're not super dark like blackberries or blueberries or bilberries, they also have their anthocyanin benefits for vision health. Now, the final bioflavonoid I want to share with you today is quercetin. Now, quercetin is really perhaps one of the most universal bioflavonoids that can help many different types of eye issues. And this is a wonderful review article published in 2021 looking at the therapeutic uses of quercetin for eye health. And basically what we found is that quercetin can help all different structures in the eye. It can help the front of the eye, the cornea. It can help with dry eye. It can help with lens health. It can help with uveitis, which is inflammation inside the eye. Many times it's actually autoimmune inflammation inside the eye. And also quercetin has been shown to help with retinal health and optic nerve health. So all in all, quercetin can be a wonderful bioflavonoid for vision health. We're still very early in the research studies. There aren't any large-scale studies done in humans. A lot of the work has thus far been done in terms of in vitro studies, so basically in basic science studies, in petri dishes, or in animal studies. looking at the benefits of quercetin. But I do think that probably over the next decade or so, we're going to have a lot more guidance on its use in eye health. Now, what are some foods that are rich in quercetin? Well, there are a wide range of foods that you can increase your intake of, including elderberries, red onions, white onions, and so on, as you can see in this chart. Because of this, if I'm cooking or if I'm making a salad, I really do prefer to include red onions rather than white onions because of their higher quercetin content. Now, we went through a lot so far. We went through, a wide range of nutrients, many of the foods. But again, there are, in the interest of time, I'm going to just stop here in terms of this part of my talk. There are over 40 different therapeutic foods for eye health. These are nutrient dense because they include not just one nutrient, but many nutrients. And you can find them all in my book, Best Foods for Eye Health, A to Z, Beyond Carrots, Best Foods for Eye Health, A to Z. This is available on Amazon. You can scan the QR code, or you could also just Google and find this. Now, I just want to caution you, there's another book also by a similar name, but different author. So if you're looking for my book, make sure the cover looks like this. And it is available both in print and electronic versions. Now, in the next stage of my talk, I'm going to be talking about 4 very simple strategies for an eye healthy diet. I shared a lot of information with you, but how do you put it all together? And I'm going to give you 4 simple strategies whereby you can put all of this information together to make sure that you are supplying your eyes with the nutrition that they need. And also, I share this also in my book, so I'm giving you a very quick summary of all of this. But this is also, I believe it's page 18 in chapter 1 of my book that you can find these strategies. 4 strategies for an eye healthy diet. So strategy number 1, eat a plant-rich diet. Plant-rich is the key, or plant-forward, if you'd like to call it that. The plants that we can eat will provide us with a wide range of many of the nutrients that we need to keep our eyes healthy. So these include colorful fruits, vegetables, also nuts and seeds and legumes. And my recommendation is to eat a plant-rich diet with at least 5 cups of fruits and veggies and nuts and grains a day. Many people say, they kind of are shocked when I tell them 5 cups. And many of them will say, I don't think I can do that, Dr. Rani. I barely get like, 1 serving in a day. Maybe I have a little bit of lettuce with my burger, et cetera. And so I really just don't get enough fruits and vegetables. And what I tell them is there is a simple way to do it. And I'm going to share with you on the next slide what that is. But before I move on to that, I do also want to stress that this type of a diet, I'm not saying that you need to be on a vegetarian diet or whole foods plant-based diet, or you need to be on a paleo green diet. What I'm saying is to get your plants in your diet. If you have animal products, that's a personal choice. If you do have animal products, I would also say make sure that you're including specific animal products like certain types of fish, salmon, mackerel, trout, tuna, or perhaps the ones that will give you the biggest bang for your buck in terms of their benefits. Also eggs for their lutein and zeaxanthin value. Now, a very simple way to get your 5 cups a day of your fruits and veggies and nuts and seeds into your diet is to have a daily green smoothie. And this is something I recommend to all of my patients, is to have 3 cups of leafy greens a day. You can pack them in. 1 cup of berries of your choice, or maybe rotate through different berries. 1 to 2 tablespoons of seeds, particularly chia seeds, flax seeds, hemp seeds. These provide the precursors of DHA and EPA, which is ALA. And also you may want to include some nuts if you do have nuts. And if you're going to choose a nut, this is one of the therapeutic foods in my book, but it's pistachios that I think are the nut of choice when it comes to your eye health. But you can also have cashews, almonds, walnuts, whatever nut you prefer, and include milk of your choice, 1 to 2 scoops of protein powder if you prefer that, and some ice, and you blend it all together. And if you do that, you will get a beautiful green smoothie that is nutrient dense, and all in one go, you can get your daily nutritional needs met for your eyes. And also, if it's challenging to make this every day, you can also make it and put it in your refrigerator and store it for about 1 or 2 days, or you can freeze it and have it at a later time. But it's a wonderful way to get your daily eye nutritional needs in, again, all in one go. Now, strategy number two, so I said we're going to talk about 4 strategies. Strategy number 1 is to eat a plant-rich diet of at least 5 cups a day. Strategy number 2 is to eat the rainbow. And I'm sure you've heard this from many people before. Many speakers, even in this summit, have probably talked about eating the rainbow, eating a diversity of different colors to provide your eyes with the many different nutrients they need. And this is a beautiful example of what eating the rainbow looks like. So various different shades of greens, yellows, oranges, reds, greens, purples, blacks, blues. And even here, even though they're not part of the rainbow, you can also include maybe some browns and whites as well. And I also remind people when I talk about eating the rainbow, I'm not talking about this. I'm not talking about eating Skittles or M&Ms. I'm talking about eating whole natural foods. And here again, this is a wide array of different colors that you can include in your diet. And I oftentimes like to share with my patients the rule of 21, which is most of us eat about 3 meals a day for 7 days a week. So if you count that up, that's about 21 meals per week. And so with each meal, strive to have a different color with each meal. And that way you are sure to get your 21 different colors and many of those nutrients that those colors will provide. Now, strategy number 3, I'm sure many of you have heard this as well before in the past, is to avoid SAD foods. Now, if you've never heard this before, by the way, SAD stands for Standard American Diet, or SAD. And these are typically foods that are very common in a Western diet, including processed foods, foods that have refined sugars in which the nutrients have been stripped, and also foods that have a high level of unhealthy omega-6 fatty acids. And again, these are just a couple of examples. So fried foods, ultra-processed foods, very high sugary foods, baked goods, etc. So rather than to follow a SAD diet, I typically recommend to my patients to follow a diet instead of a diet that's rich in omega-6 fatty acids that are, that it may include deep fried foods or foods with saturated fats, trans fats. The goal would be to switch that to increase your omega-3 intake and to also include healthy fats and oils. So think about the oils that you're cooking with. Try to stay away from a lot of the vegetable oils like safflower oil, sunflower oil, corn oil, canola oil, and instead maybe cook with other types of healthier fats. My preference is always olive oil, but depending on what you're cooking and the melting point that you're looking for, there are other alternatives as well. In terms of processed foods, try to switch them out with raw natural foods or unprocessed foods. And in terms of refined carbohydrates, you'd rather prefer whole grain grains, breads, etc., that are whole grain. And also, if you need something a little bit sweet, always try to choose foods that are naturally sweet rather than adding sugar to them. And then the final strategy I'm going to share with you is to support a healthy gut microbiome. And you've all probably heard of the human gut microbiome. There are at least 40 trillion organisms that live inside of our gut, and they help to modulate many bodily functions, from protecting against pathogens to production of vitamins such as vitamin B12 and vitamin K. The gut microbiome helps to develop our immune system and helps to regulate the immune system. It helps to promote fat storage. It helps to process dietary fiber into short-chain fatty acids that tend to be anti-inflammatory. And also, the gut microbiome is essential in the production of neurotransmitters that are found in the gut as well as in the brain. So again, the gut microbiome is very important for many, many different functions. And interestingly, when the gut microbiome is not healthy, when you have too many unhealthy bacteria rather than healthy bacteria, that is called gut dysbiosis. And so we know that people who have gut dysbiosis may be prone to certain anti-inflammatory or even autoimmune conditions, inflammatory or even autoimmune conditions. And when it comes to eye disease, we know that people who have gut dysbiosis may be more prone to conditions such as dry eye, macular degeneration, uveitis, and glaucoma. So there's really interesting, very really emerging, hot off the press type of papers that are being published on eye health and eye disease as it relates to the gut microbiome. So the goal here is to, you don't necessarily have to test exactly what's going on in the gut. You may have symptoms of gut dysbiosis, for example, bloating, constipation alternating with diarrhea, loose stools. So there are some symptoms that may be present of gut dysbiosis. Now, in my practice, if I suspect somebody has gut dysbiosis, I actually test. I do stool testing, but in general, you don't necessarily need to have stool testing done to know if you have gut dysbiosis or not, because it can be determined clinically as well. But the goal is to support a healthy gut microbiome. And how can you best do that? Well, it's through a combination of a few things. Having probiotics that are beneficial bacteria, either through eating live probiotics or taking a probiotic supplement, as well as having prebiotics in your diet, which are foods that healthy bacteria thrive on. So do these two things, include live probiotics and maybe take a probiotic supplement, but also prebiotic foods in your diet to support a healthy gut microbiome. These are some examples of probiotics that can be included in your diet. You can have yogurt of various kinds, whether it's animal-based yogurt or even plant-based yogurts, kefir, sauerkraut, which is fermented, not just in vinegar, but fermented, kombucha, kimchi. If you eat cheese, there are fermented types of cheese, tempeh, miso, and natto. These are a couple of the probiotic foods that are options. Also, you can ferment your own foods to make your own probiotic foods. It's relatively easy to do, to ferment your own veggies, and they're actually quite tasty as well. So I would suggest experimenting with this. And in terms of prebiotics, there are a number of prebiotics out there. And here, this is just a short list of the many prebiotics out there. But if you think about the foods that are included here, many of them have a lot of fiber in them. So think of that when you're thinking about prebiotic foods. And you can see some of these foods I've already talked about today. I've talked about some of the leafy greens that are here. And I've talked about some of the other spices that are here that you see listed here in the leafy greens as well. So there's, again, a lot of duplication in your nutritional needs for eye health. What you're doing for one thing can potentially help for many other things as well. So to sum up here, my top 4 strategies for an eye healthy diet. Number 1, eat a plant-rich diet. Number 2, eat the rainbow with following the rule of 21 different colors during the course of the week. Number 3, avoid sad foods. And number 4, support a healthy gut through probiotics and prebiotics. Now, if you want to learn a little bit more about the types of foods that specifically you should be eating, let's say you have a particular eye condition, whether it's cataract or diabetic retinopathy or macular degeneration or dry eye, and you want to learn more about specific foods for your own eye health, I would recommend taking this free quiz that I've developed called the Nutrition IQ Test. You can scan the QR code, take the test online. It takes about 5 minutes or so, and the quiz will ask you a couple of questions about your medical history, your eye history, family history as well, your dietary and lifestyle habits. And then it will give you a personalized recommendation about which types of foods you should focus on. Now, basically, though, you have to take the results from your Nutrition IQ test, and it's going to guide you towards certain types of foods, and couple that with my book, which is Beyond Carrots. So they really do go hand in hand to work well together. Take the test, but also refer back to the book to find out which specific foods provide you with those nutrients for specific eye conditions. Again, if you're interested in the book, Beyond Carrots, here's the QR code. It is available on Amazon. And I also have a follow-up book that I published last year. Beyond Carrots came out in about April of 2023, so just about exactly a year ago. And then my cookbook, which is the companion cookbook to Beyond Carrots, called Dr. Rani's Visionary Kitchen, came out in December of 2023. I actually have 2 versions of this book. I have the Visionary Kitchen version, which has over 200 recipes for healthy vision and the prevention of eye disease, but I also have a plant-based version as well. So you may want to check out the plant-based version if you follow a whole foods plant-based diet. And then with that, this is the last part of the talk. So in about the last 8 to 10 minutes, I wanted to answer some of the questions that oftentimes come up with my patients. And also, I do a lot of education on social media, both on Instagram and YouTube, as well as on Facebook as well. But these three questions most often come up when I'm talking to patients or interacting with people on social media. So I thought I would share them with you and I would answer them with you on while we're live here on the line. And then if you have other questions, then I'll open up the floor to additional questions that you may have. But perhaps one of the most common questions that I come across is, great, Dr. Rani, now I know what I need to eat for my eyes, but if my diet is good, do I still need an eye health supplement? So that's perhaps the number one question I get. The second question I get is, I have a history of ... fill in the blank, whether it's dry eye or cataract or macular degeneration or glaucoma. I have a history of this. Should I take a supplement to help prevent it from getting worse or to prevent myself from having to need a procedure or surgery for this particular problem? And then the third question I typically get is, there are so many eye health supplements on the market. I'm a little bit overwhelmed. Which ingredients should I look for? Which one is best? Which one should I get? So now I'm going to answer in the last about 8 minutes or so of the talk, I'm going to be answering these three questions. So the big question is, if my diet is good, do I still need an eye health supplement? And my answer to that is a resounding yes. Even if you have a good diet, you will most likely still need an eye health supplement. And the reason is because, again, there are 30 plus nutrients we need to keep our eyes healthy. And it's hard to get all of those in the adequate quantities that you need. Just think about the macular carotenoids alone. You need, at least 1 cup of kale a day or 5 cups of loosely packed green veggies a day to get your nutritional needs, your macular carotenoid needs. But think about all the other nutrients. That's why I do really strongly believe that it is important for all of us to take an eye health supplement. And there are 3 reasons why. I shared this with you earlier of the 3 carotenoids that protect our retinas from blue light and UV light. We just don't get enough from our foods. Yes, we can have lots of leafy greens in our diet, but you need to maintain that on a regular basis. So also, when we think about the carotenoids in the back of the eye, our concentration of these carotenoids does decrease as we get older. And so we constantly need to be replenishing our macular carotenoids with dietary intake or through supplement. So we do need enough of these nutrients for our macular health. The second reason why I think we all should be taking an eye supplement is because the nutrient levels in our food have dropped over time. Based on agricultural practices with frequent tilling of soil and fertilization use, pesticide use, etc. This has led to changes in our agricultural practices. And this has also led to our food, our current food, even though it may come from an organic farm, unfortunately, it may not have the same nutrient quality as what food used to have decades ago. And there are studies that are published showing that food that was grown in the 1930s and 1940s was extremely nutrient rich when compared with food that was born in the 1990s, for example. And I can give you a couple of examples with respect to magnesium levels or vitamin C levels. We know that our food is not as nutrient dense because of changes in agricultural practices. So even though you think you may be eating such a healthy diet, you may not be getting all the nutritional needs your body requires. And then the third reason that I think all of us, including children, should be taking an eye health supplement is that we have high visual demands. We're on screens most of the day. Studies have shown that adults spend about 10 hours on average per day on a screen. Children spend about at least 6 hours a day on a screen, whether it's for school or for work or for recreational purposes, for entertainment. We're all watching Netflix and streaming these days, so that counts for screen time as well. So because we are so dependent on our screens, we are so exposed to blue light all the time, not just during the day, but even into the late evening or nighttime hours, we may experience symptoms of eye strain, eye fatigue, dry eye, light sensitivity, even headaches. And studies have shown that if we have enough of the macular carotenoids in our diet, again, lutein, zeaxanthin, mesozeaxanthin, we can ward off a lot of these symptoms of digital eye strain. So yes, we have what's kind of inevitable in the world that we live in the digital world that we live in. We are on screens. Yes, we're productive on screens. We need them to connect with others, but it can take a toll. But the best way to counteract that toll is to take a supplement, including the macular carotenoids. Now, can you take can you use blue blocking glasses? Yes, you can, but there is no scientific evidence, not a single study has shown that wearing blue blocking glasses will protect your eyes from these symptoms of eye strain. And also, there's no study to show that, or long-term study to show that these blue blocking glasses will protect your eyes from macular degeneration or cataract down the road. But we do know that the nutrients are powerful and they can help protect our eyes. So keep that in mind. The research shows the difference between the benefits of nutrition versus the lack of benefit from wearing an external blue blocking lens. Now, the next question I oftentimes get is, which brands help to provide complete eye nutrition? Because there are many, many eye vitamin brands on the market. And these are just a few of them that I'm showing you here. And when I was writing my book, Beyond Carrots, in chapter 4, I actually talk all about supplementation and what does the research show? What did the ARED study show? There were two very large studies done on eye supplements for prevention of macular degeneration and prevention of cataracts. So they're called the ARED study and AREDS 2 studies. And so I won't go into much depth today about those studies because in the interest of time, but you can take a look in my book in chapter 4. I go through all of the details about the studies. But when I was researching for my book, I again looked at all of the different supplements on the market. I looked at their ingredients. I looked at the dosage of the ingredients in those supplements. And what I found is that, number one, each supplement is so different. They are all unique in their ingredient formulations, in what they contain, and the dosage they contain as well. So it's confusing. There's a lot out there, but I'm going to show you how to choose a supplement that's best for you. So when it comes to thinking about eye strain and blue light and protecting against your screen time during the day, and also protecting against macular degeneration, you want to choose an eye health supplement that has all three macular carotenoids, including lutein, zeaxanthin, and mesozeaxanthin. By the way, the AREDS formulations, the Preservision formulations that are commonly sold on the market, do not have all three macular carotenoids. The importance of mesozeaxanthin was only discovered after the AREDS studies were completed. So mesozeaxanthin was not included in the original AREDS or AREDS 2 formulations. So keep that in mind. Mesozeaxanthin is missing. The other nutrient, which is really taken a spotlight when it comes to eye health, and I didn't talk about this yet during the talk today, but I wanted to just bring it up with you because we're talking about supplements, because this nutrient can't really be gotten from foods very easily. So you would have to take a supplement, but it's called astaxanthin. And astaxanthin is a red carotenoid. It is found in many marine species. For example, salmon, starfish, crustaceans of other types, shellfish, etc. And astaxanthin is, it comes from an algae that these marine animals eat. And so the algae happens to be like a reddish pink algae. And so when the marine animals eat that algae, they take on the color. So these animals have that beautiful pinkish red color because of the astaxanthin that they're eating. But astaxanthin has been shown to have benefits for inflammation inside the eye, for improving blood flow inside the eye, for also reducing the risk for macular degeneration. So I think this is a very up-and-coming nutrient. There aren't yet that many large-scale studies using astaxanthin, but I do think probably in the next decade or so, we are going to have those studies to show the potential benefits of this powerful antioxidant nutrient, astaxanthin. So when you look for an eye health supplement, look for astaxanthin as one of the ingredients. Also look for berry extracts. Again, those anthocyanins can be very powerful for all kinds of eye health, not just lowering eye pressure, as I shared with you earlier, but for surface health and lens health and retinal health, etc. And then finally, I would suggest if you're looking for an eye health supplement, that you look for a form of vitamin E in your supplement called tocotrienol. Now, I could do a whole lecture on just tocotrienol. There is so much data out there about tocotrienol versus tocopherol, which is the other type of vitamin E. So vitamin E, there are different types, tocopherols, which tend to be in most supplements, and also tocotrienols, which comes from the annatto plant, this beautiful reddish plant found in different parts of the world that makes this natural antioxidant, which is a form of vitamin E. So the studies are early, but the studies do show, at least in animal models, that vitamin E in the form of tocotrienol can help protect against cataracts. So stay tuned for more information on that. By the way, this is astaxanthin, a beautiful red, bright red pigment here. Now, that's if you're looking, so I shared with you what you need if you're looking for an eye supplement. But in addition to the eye supplement, remember, there's over 30 nutrients our eyes need. So you also need to take a good, high quality multivitamin. And when you're looking at a multivitamin, most of them do include the B vitamins that are important for mitochondrial energy production, including vitamin B1, B2, B3, B6, B7, B9, and B12. But also your multi should include vitamin A, vitamin C, vitamin E, because these are universal antioxidants that support eye health and skin health and structural support of the eye. You also should look for a multi that includes vitamin D, either D2 or D3, and minerals, a range of minerals. I won't go through what all of them are, as well as vitamin K for healthy blood clotting. So that's what your standard multi should have. But when you think about eye health, your standard multi, if you look at the back here, this is probably one of the most popular selling multis on the market. Sorry, I went the wrong way. Let's go back here. Centrum Silver. So if you look at the ingredients on the back, it has a lot of what I just shared with you. It even has some lutein in it. Take a look at that. It's got about 20 milligrams or 250 micrograms of lutein, which is great. But it's missing something really important. And what it's missing are the bioflavonoids. So if you're already taking a multi anyway, make sure your multi has all the standard things that a multi would have. Make sure it also has bioflavonoids. And specific ones to look for, anthocyanins, which I mentioned earlier, quercetin, hesperidin, which is the one that comes from citrus fruits, rutin, and there's another one called resveratrol, which is not a bioflavonoid, but it's a polyphenol, which comes from red grapes, and it's found in red wine, and it can come from cherries, and many other types of foods have resveratrol. But these are all very powerful antioxidants, as well as antimicrobial compounds and anti-inflammatories as well. So make sure your multi has the bioflavonoids. Next, if you really want to support your eye health, you should also take a separate omega supplement. It's very hard to put it all together. It's almost impossible to put everything an eye health supplement needs, plus your multi with the bioflavonoids, plus the omegas into a single capsule or pill or other powder form, etc. It's almost impossible to put it all together because they don't all blend well. And so ultimately, you may need to take them separately. And the omegas are important to take separately so they get absorbed properly. And so most omegas will have the threes, DHA and EPA. But what I advocate for eye health, and again, in the interest of time, I didn't have the time to go through all of the research on this with you, all the data with you, but there are other omegas that are important for eye health as well, including omega-6, which is GLA, gamma-linolenic acid. Most omegas are pro-inflammatory, but GLA is an anti-inflammatory omega-6. Also omega-7, which is palmitoleic acid, and omega-9, which is oleic acid. And I'll just leave it at that because, again, I do want to leave some time for questions. But when you're thinking about an omega, don't just get an omega-3. Get something that has the wide range of omegas. And then finally, consider a probiotic to support your eye health. You can get a standard probiotic, but I look for high quality probiotics that have a high count of live bacteria at the time of manufacture. Over 30 billion colony forming units, or CFUs, is typically what's recommended because a lot of those bacterial colonies that may have been put into the probiotic at manufacture may not actually survive because they may be destroyed in transport or sitting on the shelf for weeks or months or even years. So get something with a high colony count to ensure that those bacteria, once they reach your system, are actually viable and they can help to populate your gut with healthy strains. Also, I look for a diversity of bacterial strains, not just the same strain or one or two strains. You want to get a diversity of different strains into your gut, again, to repopulate your gut with a wide diversity of bacteria. Sorry, I'm going to grab some water as well. Okay, so we are almost at the end of the formal lecture part of the talk, and then I'll open it up for some questions. So to summarize, when it comes to supplements, to optimally support your eyes, you should have at least 4 types of supplements. I know it seems like a lot, but we're filling in the gaps here when it comes to our diet. Take an eye health supplement that has lutein, zeaxanthin, mesozeaxanthin, astaxanthin, tocotrienol, and berry extracts. Take a multi with bioflavonoids. Take a complete omega with 3, 6, 7, and 9. And then finally, look for a high quality probiotic. And if you're interested, I actually, because I saw, I researched a lot about the supplements that were on the market and didn't find anything that I felt really provided people with the full spectrum of nutrients that they need to keep their eyes healthy. I ended up creating my own supplement line, specifically curated for eye health. And so in this line, I have the eye health supplement, which is Fortify. It has all of those 3 macular carotenoids. It has the astaxanthin. It has 2 types of berry extracts, both macu berry, which has been shown to help with dry eye, as well as bilberry, which has been shown to help with night vision, as well as dry eye and the optic nerve. Fortify also has vitamin E, which is in the form of tocotrienol, and it also has some ginkgo biloba, which has been shown in some studies to help with optic nerve health and glaucoma. So I recommend Fortify for anyone who's suffering from eye strain, from being on screens all day, who has a lot of blue light exposure. Also, anyone with a risk or early macular degeneration to help prevent progression of disease, and also anyone for dry eye. In my line, Ageless by Dr. Rani, I also have Nourish, which is the multivitamin that I have that also has the bioflavonoids. And these are the various bioflavonoids that are in Nourish. I won't go through what all of them are, but you can see them listed there. I have an omega that's a complete omega with DHA, EPA, GLA, and omega-7 and omega-9 all in one. And then I have a high quality probiotic, which has over 50 billion colony forming units with 10 bacterial strains. And I looked for which bacterial strains have the highest research or the most research behind them, the most studies that have been published behind these bacterial strains. So then I chose those specific ones to be in this probiotic. And I even chose some of the bacterial strains that have research behind them when it comes to chronic eye inflammatory issues. For example, there's one particular eye issue that happens oftentimes in the spring in response to allergies, which is chronic vernal conjunctivitis. And there's a particular strain in there which has been shown to help against that particular eye condition. And the other benefit of balance, it looks a little bit different than the other products in my line, but this is made this way to be shelf stable for a very, very, very long period of time. All right, so if you're interested, you can take a look at my website. These are the QR codes, but Ageless by Dr. Rani is the supplement line, and you can also get 10% off your first order. So with that, I'm going to end the formal presentation part of my talk. Thank you so much for listening. I know we've gone on for quite some time, about an hour and 30 minutes, I believe, because we started a little bit late. And if you'd like to reach out, if you have any questions, you can feel free to contact me and my staff. They're very knowledgeable. They're able to help you answer some of your questions. But my website is here, www.drranibanik.com. My email is there. And also, if you are on social media, Instagram, I do a lot of posting on Instagram on eye health tips, as well as migraine tips, because I do take care of a lot of migraine in my practice. And I also have a lot of educational videos on YouTube. So with that, I will stop right there. Sorry, we're going to go back a little bit, but I will open it up to some questions.
Great.
Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you so much, Dr. Banik. That was a lot of really great information. So we'll go ahead and officially begin the Q&A portion of the presentation. If anybody has any questions, you can raise your hand in chat. The instructions, raise your hand in Zoom. The instructions have been placed in the chat. We don't take questions directly from chat. So if you do have a question that you put into the chat, please raise your hand and we'll try to get to you. So the first question is, can you share a study where you saw significant changes in someone's eye issues with dietary changes?
Yes, absolutely. So I'll share with you the story of one of my patients, Anna, who is she's actually in her 80s right now. And she had a long-standing diagnosis of macular degeneration. And there are two types of macular degeneration. There's dry and there's wet. And so Anna had wet macular degeneration, which is the more advanced form of macular degeneration, in which there's bleeding in the back of the eye. And it's what I like to call leaky eye syndrome. You may have heard of leaky gut. This is a form of leaky eye syndrome. And what Anna, before she met me, what she had to do was to control her leaky eye syndrome and to control wet macular degeneration. She had to have monthly injections of medications into the back of the eye to stop the bleeding. These medications are called anti-VEGF medications, and they basically reduce new blood vessel formation in the back of the eye and reduce the bleeding. So she was getting these monthly injections for about 3 years before she met me. And she was really so tired of having to go to the eye doctor and get these injections. They were uncomfortable, they caused her side effects, but she knew she had to do them. And she came to me asking, what else can I do to control my macular degeneration? And also maybe to even get off of having to have these eye injections every month. So I talked to her about the diet, which is so, so important. And in my practice, I use various different therapeutic diets. I have different diets, for example, for dry eye or glaucoma or uveitis or macular degeneration, for example. So I put her on the therapeutic diet that I created for macular degeneration called the MAD, MADD, the macular degeneration diet. And so I said, you're not going to notice a change right away, but you follow this diet and follow it as best you can and take certain supplements and make some lifestyle changes and do it for 6 months. And let's see what happens. And, we obviously, we talked in between, but she came to me at the 6 month point and it was miraculous. She came to me and she was so thrilled. She was practically crying tears of joy because she said, Dr. Banik, I've finally been able to get off of my injections because of what you shared with me, because of following your diet, following your lifestyle tips, including regular exercise in my diet, taking the supplements. I did everything you told me to do. And finally, my bleeding stopped. So I was, really, I was so proud of her because she was able to implement what I had recommended. And she made a difference. She changed the trajectory of her own eye health by making those choices for healthier diet choices and also healthier lifestyle choices. So it was one of my most proud success moments in terms of treating people with eye issues and using integrative and functional medicine strategies.
Thank you. And I would imagine that she was pretty adherent to the protocol that you laid out for her. Given that this is, a lot of the changes are lifestyle changes, how receptive are your patients to making those changes and maintaining those changes?
So initially, it's a little bit of a shock because it is an overhaul. It's an overhaul of one's life. You may have had habits that you've been following for years or decades. Now all of a sudden, you come to see me and I'm telling you to try to break some of those habits. It's not easy by any means. But when people come to me, oftentimes I'm their second, third, or fourth opinion. They've been to either eye doctors and they haven't gotten the results that they've been looking for, and they want to make a change. So there's already a lot of buy-in to what I'm suggesting to them because they've seen that other things have not worked yet. Like for example, with dry eye, you can treat dry eye simply by putting in drops frequently, every couple of hours, lubricating your eye. But that's really the tip of the iceberg when it comes to treatment options for dry eye. There is so much more one can do for dry eye. And when people learn, okay, I could do this and this and this, and maybe change around my workstation and think about, doing some exercises for my eyes and maybe making some changes in my diet. When they realize that these are small steps that can really make a big difference, then I get their buy-in. And I also I present it in such a way that it's not all at once because that can be a little bit overwhelming. I have them make a small change, maybe one small change every week, and then build on that. So they're building healthy habits. So it's not just they're doing everything all at once because that is really very, very difficult to do, to change your diet at once and change your lifestyle at once. But when you do it in small steps that are achievable steps, it is doable. And so that's typically how I, talk to my patients about it. It's not just, complete overhaul. It's making taking those baby steps to get the ultimate results that they're looking for.
And with that philosophy of baby steps in mind, you named a lot of different foods that people could eat, which can be, really overwhelming if people aren't already living this lifestyle. If you had to recommend three top foods for optimum eye health, and obviously backed by your experience and perhaps scientific evidence, what would those three foods be?
If I had to pick three specific foods, I would pick kale, for the reasons I mentioned earlier, because it's very high in lutein, zeaxanthin, but also high in vitamins A and K and many, many minerals. So I would pick kale. The second one I would pick would be broccoli, or better yet, broccoli sprouts, because broccoli sprouts, and we didn't have a chance to talk about this, but it is also in my book, but broccoli sprouts have a particular compound called sulforaphane, which is important in the detoxification process in our bodies. And so it helps to detoxify, it helps to quell inflammation. And so broccoli sprouts, some of the early research has shown that broccoli sprout, extract with sulforaphane can help protect retinal cells and protect against atrophy of retinal cells that can happen in macular degeneration. So I would choose broccoli sprouts. And the third food I would choose would be a very dark kind of berry. So whatever is available to you, whether it's blueberries, blackberries, elderberries, bilberries, a dark type of berry. And I would recommend that at least half a cup or even 1 cup per day to really support complete eye health.
That's great. Thank you. What are the most common misconceptions about eye health that you encounter, and how do you respond to them?
I would say the biggest misconception is that people should be wearing blue blocking glasses. In this day and age, that's perhaps one of the top questions all my patients ask me, like, should I bought these blue blockers, do they really do anything? And I had shared this also when we did our panel discussion a few days back, but not all blue blockers, first of all, there's no scientific evidence that blue blockers work, but you may want to wear them if you're having trouble sleeping. They may help set to your circadian rhythm or maintain a healthier circadian rhythm. So if you choose to get blue blockers, make sure that they have a deep tint. Because if they're a lighter tint, for example, if they look clear or if they are light yellow in color or light amber in color, most often that tint is not blocking much of the blue light. It's probably only blocking about 10 to 30% of the blue light. And the way you can test it is simply by putting on the blue blocker and looking at something blue on your screen. If you put on your blue blocker and if you still see the color blue, most likely that blue blocker is not blocking much of the blue light. Versus if you get a deeper tinted blue blocker, whether it's a deep red tint, deep orange, or deep amber, that deeper tint will probably block about 98 to 99% of the blue light. So number one, not everybody needs a blue blocker. Number two, if you do want to get it for other reasons, not specifically eye health, but for other reasons, get a deeper tint.
And going along the misconceptions, in medicine in general, we tend to break apart the human body, and you have an eye doctor, you have a dentist, you have a dietitian, you've got a heart doctor, and every different kind of doctor. Do people tend to associate, like cardiovascular disease, a lot of people would associate that with diet, but do people tend to associate eye health with diet when they, first come to see you?
Not at all. And in fact, I mean, most people just come for their routine eye checkup saying, oh, I needed to get glasses. But what they don't realize is that the eye is, because it's so complex, it's actually intricately linked to many other organ systems in the body. And like other organ systems in the body, we do need nutrition to help promote our eye health. So I think making that realization first that the eye is not by itself. It does need a lot of nutrients, just like other organs do need a lot of nutrients. And also, this is also something important that I really want to spread this message out there, is that the eye, many people think of the eye as a window to your soul. That's oftentimes what we hear as a common saying, but the eye is really a window to your overall health. And when you go in for your eye exam, it's not only that your eye doctor is looking for your glasses prescription or looking for glaucoma or dry eye. Your eye doctor is actually doing a comprehensive exam that can sometimes pick up many other health issues in other parts of the body. So the eye is really not just a window to the soul. The eye is a window to our overall health. And we can pick up, as eye doctors, when we do a dilated eye exam, we can pick up over 200 medical conditions from an eye exam alone, which is really mind-boggling. So conditions that may be related to diet. For example, you mentioned cardiovascular disease. I've picked up strokes from an eye exam, high blood pressure, diabetes, inflammation, autoimmune diseases like multiple sclerosis, cancers from an eye exam. So it's really important to think of the eye as almost like a canary in the coal mine when it comes to overall health, because it tends to show up in the eye first.
Great, thank you. And we've got about 6 minutes left, so I'm gonna let the audience ask some questions. Leslie K, please state where you're from and ask your question.
Hi. So I'm from the Central Coast of California, and you listed a ton of different isolated nutrients. I'm wondering what you think about the advantage of a product, say like Juice Plus, that's concentrated whole fruits and veggies in a capsule, as opposed to those individual nutrients and you're going to get all of the well-rounded nutrition that goes along with that.
Yeah, so I'm not familiar with that particular brand, but I have heard of other products that take extracts of a lot of these different foods and extract their bioflavonoids or their vitamins, the minerals, et cetera. What I'll tell you is that we really should rely on our diet first, because that's how these nutrients are going to be most bioavailable, is how they get absorbed through the gut, how they go through the body, maybe coupled with other compounds or fats. For example, some nutrients are better absorbed with fat. So when you take nutrients that are concentrated in a capsule or powder or whatever form it is, you're not necessarily taking it in the way that nature intended. You're not taking it with the other nutrients. And also, the other key thing is when you're taking it in a capsule or tablet form or powder form, or maybe the powder form would have this, but you're not getting the fiber that the whole foods would provide you. So that's another, and also the hydration, because a lot of foods, the majority, the major nutrient in a lot of the foods is actually water. Many, especially fruits and vegetables, are like 95% water. So you're not getting the water, you're not getting the fiber. So yes, you can take something like that as a very concentrated way to get many of these nutrients in all in one go. But really, it is best to try to strive to get it through diet.
Great, thank you. Next question is coming from Aruna S. Please state where you're from and ask your question.
Hi, Dr. Rani. I'm Aruna from Maryland. What do you think
Nice
about
to meet you.
nice to meet you too. What do you think about eye exercises helping with eye health?
That's a wonderful question. And we could go on for another hour about eye exercises. So there are specific eye exercises that can be helpful to help you rest your eyes, to help you rest your focusing ability. But one thing, and I do recommend them in my practice. I know that there's a lot out there on, if you just Google eye exercises, there's a lot out there on YouTube and et cetera, on videos that show eye exercises. One thing I just want to clarify about eye exercises that's really important is that eye exercises cannot help you to reduce your power. Power means your refractive error. So whether you're nearsighted, farsighted, if you have astigmatism, if you have presbyopia, eye exercises have not been proven to help reduce your power. I know that there's a book out there there's a method called the Bates method that a lot of people have tried or, they believe in, where if you do certain eye exercises, you can reduce your myopia. You can go from a -10 to a -5, or you can get rid of your astigmatism. I had an open mind. I read Dr. Bates's book. Actually, Dr. Bates was a doctor at the hospital where I teach at New York Eye and Ear Infirmary here in New York City. He was a doctor there over 80 years, I think about 75, 80 years ago, where he practiced. He did a lot of his experiments at my hospital. So I approached his book with an open mind, and I read it and I said, you know what? I'm going to try this myself and I'm going to see if it works for me. So I have myopia. I'm about a -350 and I'm a -175. And I tried it. I tried the exercises for about 3 months. It really did not make a difference for me. And also, his experiments were never replicated by other eye providers. So it is not really something that most eye doctors will say that it works. Most eye doctors believe that it doesn't work. So I just wanted to clarify that.
And So we have about 2 minutes left. So along the same lines, as far as like a physical activity or something, is wearing glasses. So when some people say that when you wear glasses, you end up making your eyes more dependent and you can weaken your eyes. Is there any truth to that?
That overall is typically a myth. The only truth to it is if your prescription is not correct. So if you're overcorrected or undercorrected, you may not feel comfortable with the glasses. It may actually give you a lot of eye strain. It may actually go the other way where you really can't see well because you're overcorrected or undercorrected. So if you have the correct prescription, you should have the best quality vision that your eyes can deliver. And the way to know whether you have the correct prescription is to request something that your eye doctor can do called a cycloplegic refraction. Now, most refraction is when they put the lenses in front of your eyes and they ask which is better, one or two. That's called refraction. Most people, when they do refraction, most eye doctors will do it without putting in drops. And without putting in the drops and doing it, we call it a dry refraction, it can give errors in the refractive numbers. But if you do a cycloplegic refraction, which is after the drops have been put into the eye, then that is your true prescription. And that is what your eye doctor should go off of, your true prescription when the drops have been put in. And I can't get into the actual physiology of it because it does take a little bit of time to explain it all, but ask for that cycloplegic refraction if you feel like your eyeglasses prescription or contact lens prescription is a little bit off or if it's not helping you.
Okay. And so that actually is, so then you don't have to sit there and say, is one better or is two better? It actually will be a measure that's not subjective then, basically.
Yeah, it takes away a lot of the subjective component. They may still ask you which is better, one or two, to refine it. So they may get the underlying true prescription using that cycloplegic refraction and then maybe refine it by a tiny bit. But it really does take a lot of that subjective aspect out of it. It's much more objective.
Great. Thank you so much for that information. And thank you for all the information that you shared today. We're out of time, so I want to thank you again. And if we can unmute the audience so they can share their appreciation for Dr. Banik.
Thank you so much, Doctor.
Blessings. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Blessings to you.
Thank
Love
you,
you,
Doctor.
Dr.